plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up today, Kemi Badenoch, she has given a press conference where she basically acknowledges that the Tories got it wrong when it came to immigration. You don't say. Anyway, I've got to say, she stopped short of apologising. Do you think she should have apologised for getting it so bad as a party? She did, though, unveil her plan to manage immigration. I'll tell you what the plan is, and you can tell me whether you think it's going to work or not. And let me ask you this, whose job is it to give children their breakfast? Is it the school's job or the parents' job? Today has seen a massive rollout of the free breakfast programme, but is it a move in the right direction or not? And at PMQs today, a Labour MP has been criticised for what some are interpreting as a call for blasphemy laws. Wait there until you hear Keir Starmer's answer to that question. All of that and lots more. And alongside me, my panel, I've got Zoe Gundoval, the political journalist and broadcaster, and Charlie Downs, the political commentator. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live for the 6 o'clock news.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 6 o'clock. Labour have no serious plan for ending illegal migration. That's a message from Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, who says we can no longer be naive. Giving a speech a short while ago, she said the Conservatives are to thank for a reduction in net immigration expected to be confirmed tomorrow. The Tory leader laid out her 5-point plan for tackling immigration while admitting her party got it wrong in the past. Meanwhile, earlier today, the Conservative leader accused Sir Keir Starmer of making everything worse and dodging the Chancellor's pledge not to raise taxes or borrow more in the future. In a fiery exchange at Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer hit back, saying the leader of the opposition wanted all the benefits of the budget without explaining how she'd pay for it.
2 weeks ago, she stood there and said that she wanted all the investment, all the benefits of the budget, but she didn't know how she was going to pay for it. I noticed that, having come here criticising the national insurance rises over and over again, on Monday she admitted that she wouldn't reverse the position that we set out. Meanwhile, her science minister was saying he was going energetically to do the opposite. They really haven't got a clue what they're doing.
In response to roars from the Labour benches, Kemi Badenoch suggested Sir Keir Starmer should resign over what she described as Labour's lies.
If he wants to know what Conservatives would do, he should resign and find out. Until then, I'm the one asking the questions. There's a petition out there, 2 million people asking him to go. He's the one who doesn't know. He's the one who doesn't know how things work. It is not government that creates growth, Mr. Speaker. It is business.
In other news, thousands of displaced Lebanese residents in the south are returning home after a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah came into effect. However, Israel's warning people not to return until its forces have withdrawn from certain areas, which could take up to 2 months. Here, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says the ceasefire is long overdue, calling for a political solution to end the crisis permanently. Meanwhile, aid organisations are calling for the truce to extend to Gaza, where fighting continues. And some breaking news. Several people nominated to roles in Donald Trump's incoming cabinet and administration have been targeted by bomb threats and swatting. That's according to a spokesperson for the US president-elect. It's understood the threats were made on Tuesday night and this morning, and law enforcement acted quickly to ensure the safety of those targeted. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company till 7 o'clock this evening alongside me my panel, Zoe Grundvald, the political journalist and broadcaster, and Charlie Downs, the political commentator. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. As are each and every single one of you at home. What's on your mind tonight, ladies and gents? Lots that we need to discuss. We'll look at Kemi Badenoch's new immigration plans. I want to ask you a very simple question. Who should feed your kids? Is it you or is it schools? Also, did you see what went down at PMQs today? A Labour MP, he's facing criticism as we speak for basically what many people are interpreting as calling for blasphemy laws. If that's not interesting enough, you wait till you see Keir Starmer's response to that question. All of that coming up in the programme. You can get in touch and get involved all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or X me. And don't forget, if you need to go out, you can take me with you. What a treat for your ears, because, of course, we are on the radio. Now, before I get stuck into all of those topics, I do just actually want to start my programme by paying my respects to Peter Lynch. We'll all be familiar with who he is. He very sadly had his funeral this morning. 61-year-old grandfather, and we all know the story. He took his life very sadly in jail recently. He, of course, was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months for basically shouting at the police and saying things that you perhaps shouldn't say to the police. Many people suggesting racist, provocative remarks, and he ended his life. I mean, what kind of society are we in when people are being jailed for acts like this, ladies and gents? And speaking of who is being jailed and who isn't, another story that also caught my eye as well. This fella, did you see this one? He got released from prison this week. Abdel Rauf Abdullah, he was released 2 months ago, ladies and gents. The parole board said the following things about this man. I mean, it really stuck in my, it stopped me in my tracks, quite frankly, because they're basically, the probation officer, the prison officer, the psychologist said that this guy, apparently poses a high risk of serious harm to the public. He shows levels of engagement with extremism, an intent to commit terror-related offending. Apparently, they were worried that when he was released from prison, there were not plans that were robust enough in place to keep people safe. He was sentenced, he had an extended sentence of 9.5 years. This was for helping people go to Syria and fund and prepare terrorism attacks. I don't understand how someone who a parole board literally 2 months ago has deemed to be all of this high risk and so on and so forth, a high propensity to radicalise others, he is now out on the streets of Britain, very sadly. Grandfathers, Peter Lynch and people like that behind bars for awful words. I mean, I'll leave it to you to be the judge of what you make to it all on the justice system in this country. A big story today, moving on from that, Kemi Badenoch, she has had a lot to say about immigration. Let's listen to her define what she thinks the problem is.
I believe our country is a beacon of light that shines all over the world, a place of security, opportunity and prosperity, where people are treated equally. Millions want to come here, but we as politicians have to do right by the citizens of this country before anyone else. Our country cannot sustain the numbers we have seen. We are reducing the quality of life for people already here because immigration is at a pace too fast to maintain public services, and at a rate where it is next to impossible to integrate those from radically different cultures.
But it's all right, because she's got a plan. Listen to the plan.
We will review every policy, treaty and part of our legal framework, including the ECHR and the Human Rights Act. And in designing our detailed policies, we will put the following elements at the core. A strict numerical cap with visas only for those who will make a substantial and clear overall contribution. A fully transparent approach, publishing all the data so that for the first time, everyone can see the real costs and benefits of different types of migration. A reconsidered approach to citizenship and settlement, making the path to a British passport a privilege to be earned, not an automatic right. Zero tolerance for foreign criminals remaining in the UK. And, of course, an effective deterrent for illegal migration.
Well, there you go, the problem and the potential solution. Do you sit there feeling optimistic, going, yes, finally, we've got a plan that's going to fix the immigration that's so very much out of control, or not? Charlie, where are you on it?
I don't think it's particularly surprising that Kemi Badenoch's come out and said this, because it's a political necessity for her as leader of the Conservative Party to address the fact that the reason they lost the election in such a staggering way was because they have for 14 years betrayed the British public on a consistent basis on the topic of immigration. It's a topic that people care hugely about because it's having a hugely detrimental effect on our country. But do I think that she is serious about this? No, because let's not forget that in 2018 it was Kemi Badenoch who bragged about removing the cap from Tier 2 visas because of the need for, quote, skilled workers, therefore flooding our country with students, with dependents and so on. This is a woman who has always consistently championed immigration. She ran, when she was running for the leadership of the party, she ran on the basis of being a Nigerian woman and a child of immigrants and all of this sort of thing. So I don't think she's serious. I don't think that she's actually going to do anything worthwhile on this topic because the Conservative Party just don't seem able to. And moreover, one other thing. Her idea, she's committed to a cap, a hard numerical cap on immigration. But if the Conservative attitude to this is anything to go by, that could be like 150,000. Because in the current context, yeah, that would be more desirable. But in principle, that's still insanely high.
And just to give you some further context about why she's doing this today, so we've got immigration figures that are coming out tomorrow. She's preempting that number will have reduced since the previous set, and she's basically getting out in front, if you like, and she's essentially saying the reason that those figures will have declined is because of work that the Tories have previously done tinkering with some of those policies. So she's getting out front foot, trying to take the glory, I think, if those figures are coming in a direction that is downwards. Where are you on all this, Zoe?
Well, I think this is going to be really difficult for Badenoch, and particularly this kind of thing about reviewing the ECHR and the Human Rights Act. I mean, that's not particularly news. We know this formed part of the Tory leadership campaign. Robert Jenrick went a bit further on this. Kemi Badenoch said it would be under review. This is something that I think could be fatal for the Tory party. The party is so divided on what it wants to do about the ECHR. I mean, we saw it a little bit on Rwanda when they were debating Rwanda. Sunak's government just about managed to get that over the line, but there was so much disorder in the ranks that I think the problem with saying we're going to review this, although it might bide you some time to actually come up with policy, it doesn't stop your party from talking about it. And eventually they will need a comprehensive policy that the party can agree on. I don't think the party can agree on this. You have some, half of the party are Tory MPs who care a lot about our international obligations. They value the ECHR, they value the Human Rights Act. The other half, broadly, aren't happy with it and they want to see it reformed or disposed of altogether. And I think Badenoch is treading a really difficult line that I don't think she'll be able to do to try and marry the two.
But surely, though, she's just got to sit the people down and say, look at what happened to us in the last general election. We were absolutely battered, surely she will be telling them, because we let all of this go. So you can have all of your virtues and your morals or whatever it is and your love of ECHR, that's fascinating, but you're not going to get re-elected if you continue on that track. So surely it's an easy thing to sell, isn't it?
But it wasn't just immigration. I mean, the top priorities for voters were cost of living, NHS and immigration.
I know, but what do you think is increasing? Stuff like people's inability to access the NHS, inability to get homes and
well, I would say a dearth of public funding is one thing, and the the Tories implemented an agenda of austerity that starved our public services for 14 years. They are reaping the benefits, they're reaping the consequences of that. And actually, the problem is not just that the Tories aren't aligned on immigration, they're not even aligned on tax, which was the one thing that used to unite the Conservative Party. You have some Conservatives that think they do need to spend more on the NHS, that actually putting some money into the state would be helpful. There are others who want to see tax be reduced altogether, and they want to see red tape cut. The party is fundamentally divided, and even if they can get their heads together on immigration, which I don't think they can, I don't think they can get their heads together on the other issues that really matter to voters.
I do feel a little bit, you can tell me if you agree or not, I feel that Kemi is nicking a few ideas from Reform UK, because did you see Rupert Lowe? He was also at PMQs this afternoon. He was talking very much about transparency. Take a listen to this.
I sincerely hope that all of us in this House agree that good government is transparent government. In response to my written question on publishing the number of foreign nationals receiving universal credit, I was informed by a Department of Work and Pensions Minister that the feasibility of developing suitable official statistics was being examined. Will the Prime Minister today commit to using his good offices to publish this data transparently?
Rupert there says that everyone agrees about transparency. The fellow behind him didn't. Did you see him shaking his head at that concept? That's Luke Taylor, a Lib Dem MP. I've got in touch with him and asked him, well, why are you shaking your head? Are you suggesting that you don't think we should have transparency? I'm yet to hear a response from him. Do you think they're nicking some of the Reform UK ideas?
Well, I think there is a general trend on the British right, to the extent that it does exist, towards these kinds of talking points, because it's just inevitable. Because you only need to go out into the street and look at what our country has become to understand that we have seriously gone wrong at some point in time. But the problem with Kemi Badenoch, and to be honest, there was a time where I called myself a Conservative. I don't call myself a Conservative anymore. Not in the party sense. The political philosophy of Conservatism has failed because it's not equipped to deal with the scale of the problem that we have in this country. Because commitments to numerical caps implies that we still need immigration. It implies that net positive immigration is still desirable, which it isn't. And even Reform UK, as much as I prefer them to Conservative Party, and I think Rupert Lowe has been hugely impressive on this issue, even they are still saying net zero migration. We have an outflow of 400,000 people every year. So that's still 400,000 people, new people, from we know not where, coming in every year, and that's still completely unsustainable. So I would actually rather have a conversation about net negative migration, about policies that can be implemented to reverse some of the damage that has been inflicted on our country as a result of mass migration.
Final word to you, Zoe.
I think it's completely wrong to say that immigration, that we don't need immigration, we aren't dependent. We clearly are. We have an ageing population. We need immigrants in our health service. We need immigrants in our hospitality sectors, in all our sectors. They provide not only numbers in the workforce, but also skills that we need.
Like what?
Well, like nurses who come over to work in the NHS.
Who also bring 5, 6, 7, 8 dependents who are then taken
no,
from the system.
I mean, that's just completely not true. I mean, that is not true on any scale. There are plenty of people who come over here, and overall, migrants are a net contributor in terms of taxation to the economy. So
that's
that
not
just
true.
is,
So in
no,
order
it
to
is
break
true.
even, migrants need to earn about £47,000 a year, and only 19% earn that much.
We have an ageing population where we need a young workforce. At the minute, we are not producing enough young employees to fill that deficit.
Mass migration has a depressing effect on birth rates because it makes housing more expensive, which makes it more difficult to start a family.
Well,
and therefore, this policy that is supposedly a remedy, a solution to our ageing population, is actually making the problem
We can go
worse.
round in circles in this. The other thing that makes housing much more expensive is when governments don't build enough houses. It's also when the NHS isn't working properly because we don't have enough staff. It's also when our hospitality sector is failing because we don't have enough employees there. I mean, we can go round the houses on this. It can be chicken and egg. But I think to suggest that immigration is a net negative, I think that's just wrong.
We can't go around the houses because they're not building any. But the reason that they need to build them is because the population is growing, and that's not coming from the native population. That's coming purely from immigration because we don't have a replacement rate of birth rates.
That's one of the things that Chris Philp, he brought up in his follow-up to Kemi. He was saying that he reckons 120,000 new homes per annum is what's needed just to keep up with net migration, is what he was suggesting. Final thoughts to you at home on that topic coming up after the break. It's all well and good talking about kids then, but whose responsibility is it to pay for them? Who should feed your kids breakfast, you or the school? Tell me.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I'm joined now by an acknowledged authority on Ludwig van Beethoven. He's already written 7 books on the subject, and next week his 8th is released. It's called In Search of Beethoven, and it stands apart as a deeply personal account of John Souché's relationship with the great composer as he follows his footsteps from Bonn to Vienna. Yes, I introduce author, journalist and classic FM presenter John Souché.
Hello, Michael.
It's delightful to have you here, and you have, as I say, written now 8 books on Beethoven. So the question is, why Beethoven?
Well, the word that is often used that I don't like is obsession, obsessive, because somehow there's something not quite right about that. The word that I use is passion. I have a passion for this man's life and music that began, I suppose, around 50 years ago, sometime in my early 20s. I can't remember the exact moment. He kind of crept up on me, and suddenly, as I was a journalist, TV journalist all my life, but before that I was a failed musician. I wanted to be a professional musician, but fortunately for the world of music, I realised I didn't have the talent. But this man's music crept up on me, and I knew from then that it would not go away, it would only increase, and that is what's happened. There are other composers I will listen to, minor names like Mozart, Wagner, Haydn, but Beethoven just does it for me. I was highly educated musically at school because I loved it, to the extent that I wanted to turn professional, but as I say, I didn't have the talent, but that has stayed with me. I read music, I understand music, as you say, I play the trombone, in those days to quite a high level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry till 7 o'clock. So Grunwald and Charlie Downs alongside me. Lots of you getting in touch about Kemi Badenoch's new plan when it comes to immigration. Alan said, Michelle, in his mind, it felt like the plan was basically 1, let's have a meeting, 2, let's have a meeting, 3, let's have another meeting, and so on and so forth. You're a harsh man, Alan. Ron says, Michelle, they will never essentially get to grips with this unless we send people essentially straight back to France. It will go on forever and ever. Philip agrees with you. Essentially, Zoe saying it doesn't matter what Kemi Badenoch has, what he calls the Tory wets, which are a majority. He says they will never allow her to implement many of the things, such as potentially leaving the ECHR. Again, Richard says anyone who thinks either the Tories or the Labour Party are going to make things better for us are deluded. But Beth feels that Kemi did a great job and that she's pragmatic and taking a methodical approach. Jim likes Kemi. Lots of you, actually, I've got to say it, like Kemi. Ian basically has got in touch as well, saying that you think the Tories apologising for immigration is too little, too late. For over a decade, they campaigned on reducing immigration, then basically did nothing. But Ian, with all due respect, my friend, you've missed a crucial thing there. She didn't actually apologise. And this was one of the things that caught my ears, Charlie, because she acknowledged the problem. She said basically that they'd got it wrong, but didn't then say, and I thought this was a mistake on her part, she stopped short of saying, you know what, I got it wrong, and for that, I apologise on behalf of my party. Do you think she should have done?
Well, it would have been a very big thing for a politician to do, but for that exact reason, you know, the fact that she is a politician, it doesn't surprise me that she didn't, because any admission of failure, any admission of wrongdoing...
No, but she acknowledged that she got it wrong. She categorically said, she acknowledged, said that I'd got it wrong on behalf of the party and the leader of the party. I acknowledge we got it wrong.
Yeah,
so
well,
I think that.
If she wanted to make a clean break with the past, then she would have apologised, but I don't think she does want to do that, because she is the continuity candidate. You look at the people that were behind her during the leadership election, this is like Michael Gove, CCHQ, and so on. And so it's no surprise that she doesn't want to kind of tarnish the record of her party. But I would actually also add to this, right, that I don't think she actually has understood the problem, because in her speech, she still is maintaining this line that the most important thing is integration when it comes to immigration, that people come here and integrate into our, quote, values and institutions. This is what she said. But actually, even if we had, say, 1.2 million new people coming here a year, as we have done for the last couple of years, and all of them were, quote, integrating into our, quote, values, it still would be a problem, because we are not a nation of values. America, for example, was a nation that began at a certain time with a certain set of ideas. Britain is an ancient ancestral homeland for the English, Scottish, Welsh and Irish people. We're not a nation of values, we are a nation of people. Therefore, the kind of sort of demographic, the effect on demographics that immigration has had, has a fundamental effect on the spirit of the land. And that's never, they cannot wrap their heads around that fact.
She basically was suggesting that if immigration happens too fast, the ties that bind us, she says, starts essentially to fray. What do you think to that point about adopting to the values and so on and so forth? Sorry.
Well, I think that Britain is, you know, I think it is a multicultural place. I think it's tolerant. I think it's respectful. I think it values freedom and liberty. And I think if people are coming over here, then they should respect all those things too. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think one of it is respecting points of difference, and people who come here should also respect our points of difference as well. I think what has been a problem for the Tories is that by not processing the backlog, what you've had is asylum seekers staying in hotels, for example, in communities for a long, long time because they haven't had their claim processed, and that has caused community tensions. I don't think that's a good thing. I think we need to look at processing claimants. It's better for the claimants themselves, it's better for local communities, and that in turn would help with integration. And also, you know, some countries have really good integration systems. I mean, we could look at whether we, you know, are helping people learn the local language, whether we are helping people get into schools, helping people go to volunteering in their communities. I used to do some volunteering for a charity that helped asylum seekers learn English, and that they really valued that. So I think there are things we could be doing better. The problem is, in post-Tory Britain, all those kind of services that used to do that are no longer exist. So you do have a situation where not only immigrants are struggling, but people who live here and have always lived here are struggling to access those kind of volunteer services as well.
Did you see the story today as well about the Justice Secretary? She is saying that there'll be yet more money made available for the legal aid for these asylum claims for people to help try and speed up the backlogs. To Zoe's point, where, ladies and gents, does this blank chequebook seem to come in? I don't understand. When it comes to this issue, we seem to have this magic money tree growing. I don't know whose back garden it is in now. It's like a field. It's that size. It's that big, this magic money tree. I thought we were absolutely skint. So where then do we keep finding this money from for this issue? It feels to me anyway like it's never ending. What do you think? PMQs today, one Labour MP has come under a bit of focus because many people are interpreting what he asked as essentially for us to have blasphemy laws in this country. You don't want to miss this. Wait till you hear as well. Keir Starmer's answer to it. All that after the break.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Cold one tonight, frost already starting to form and some dense patches of fog are already thickening up out there too. Storm Connell is clearing away. It was named by the Dutch Weather Service because it's bringing them some very wet and windy weather. But as it clears, high pressure's moving in, clear skies for most overnight. We've seen some thick fog through the day today across Northern Ireland, thickening up again tonight and across parts of England and Wales. We are going to see things turning misty and murky with some quite dense patches of fog by dawn. freezing fog as well, as temperatures dip quite widely below freezing. Towns and cities -1, -2, rural spots much lower than that. One place that may not see much frost, the far southwest of England. Here a bit more cloud moving in, but certainly for Scotland, I say towns and cities a little below freezing, but through some sheltered glens, -7, -8, maybe -9. Not quite as cold in Northern Ireland, because here we are going to have the fog. Something to bear in mind for the morning rush hour. It should be clearing through the morning as the breeze picks up. Dense patches of fog also likely northwest England, East Wales, the Midlands and parts of East Anglia and the southeast. So again, some pretty unpleasant travelling conditions through that morning rush hour. And that fog may well last actually well beyond the rush hour and linger in some spots into the afternoon. In the west, it's going to turn cloudy, a bit of patchy rain for Wales, southwest England, certainly Northern Ireland turning a bit damp as the breeze picks up here. Many parts of Scotland, Northern England will be dry and bright, but still quite chilly here, 4, 5, 6 at best in the east, where the fog sticks will struggle to get much above freezing. But it is turning milder. The wind's coming up from the south on Friday. Still feeling pretty chilly, I suspect, in these eastern areas, despite some hazy sunshine. Could be some fog around again on Friday morning, and then in the west we're looking at rain coming in. Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, bit of rain for Wales and southwest England too come Friday. But it is turning milder with temperatures here back into double figures. Goodbye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays continue heading east of Dungannon on the Belfast-bound carriageway of the M1, which is partly blocked just after junction 13. The Ardress turn-off, a lorry's caught fire and recovery work is still taking place. Moving into County Durham on the A1M, the motorway is partly blocked southbound Carville to Boban because of an accident. The M60 in Greater Manchester down to a single-lane anti-clockwise approaching junction 5. The Princes Parkway exit following an accident, and in Staffordshire the M54 partly blocked westbound from junction 2 to 3 to the west of Wolverhampton. There's been a collision. In South London at Wallington, the 8237 Manor Road remains closed after the storm damaged a building on Sunday morning. Investigation work continues. And on London Underground, there are still severe delays on the District Line Barking to Upminster following earlier emergency engineering works in Upminster. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Thanks for keeping me company. Alongside me, Zoe Grunwald, the political journalist and broadcaster, and Charlie Downs, the political commentator. So many of you getting involved in that last conversation about immigration. I'll bring some of your comments in before the end of the show again. But look, PMQs today. One question seems to be getting a lot of attention. Let's listen to it, shall we?
November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran, despite opposition from the previous government. Acts of such mindless desecration only serve to fuel division and hatred within our society. Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
Can I agree with him that desecration is awful and I think should be condemned across the House? We are, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms.
Well, that's a Birmingham Labour MP, Tahir Ali. I've got to say that I did reach out to Mr. Ali because I certainly, for one, have many questions I would like to ask him. Guess what? I didn't hear back, but I'll keep trying. Charlie Downs, what do you think is what you just heard?
Well, the key thing to understand here, I think, is the fact that the notion of the separation of church and state is a liberal myth. All regimes have a state religion. And so this question that you're seeing below me here, should the UK have blasphemy laws? It's not a question of should, it's which blasphemy laws will the UK have? Because the UK is a nominally secular state. I mean, the Church of England is our official church. But in the way we are governed, it is done along atheistic lines, which is to say the state attempts to act as a neutral arbiter between different religious groups, regarding all of them as equal. Now, we do actually have a state religion, which is one that sacralises minority groups, basically. We have hate speech laws, which are already blasphemy laws. But this liberal idea that the state is just neutral on this topic opens the door to aggressive religions like Islam, like woke, and it sees the institutions subverted because there are no defence mechanisms against these things. So if the question is not whether, but which, I would prefer to see, if we are going to have these kinds of speech laws, I'd prefer to see British identity protected, British history protected, and Christianity protected.
Well, I'd prefer from my Prime Minister to have a set of chops about him and actually turn round to that MP and say, no. We don't have blasphemy laws, thank you very much.
He sat down with
we won't be reintroducing them. That's what I would like to see. I do have to add, by the way, you just called Islam a religion of aggression. I've got to say that many people will be watching this shouting at each other, telling me it's a religion of peace. Zoe?
So did Tahir Ali then actually call for a blasphemy law?
Well, many people would argue that by the back door, yes, he did. What he called for was measures. He didn't define what measures are. And if he granted me a presence tonight, one of the first things I would ask him is, what measures? What do you want? What are you asking for? And many people are interpreting this, me included, as him wanting blasphemy laws. I'd love to know his breakdown of what measures he's calling for.
Yeah, because I think that's worth clarifying, because we do, as Charlie said, we do have measures already in place in the law. We have laws against hate speech. We have the Public Order Act. There are various things you can't do. You can't just go out and abuse somebody for their religion. I understand that people are concerned about rising rates of Islamophobia in this country, about anti-Semitism, and I think the government have to think about how they're going to respond to that. But I actually think Keir Starmer's answer was fairly reasonable. He said they're committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, and agreed that desecration is awful, as did the UN. I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable position, and considering the fact that Tahir Ali didn't actually call for blasphemy laws, I don't know what more you expect the Prime Minister to have said in that moment.
Well, first things first, I don't agree that anyone should desecrate a religious, whether it's a monument, a place of worship, a religious text, whatever. That's not for me. I don't think you should do that. I think, why would you want to deliberately offend someone? So that's not for me. I don't kind of condone that behaviour. I just think, why would you do that? But notwithstanding that, it is a free society. And people essentially should be able to freely criticise religion. And when we start calling for measures for desecration, I think back, my mind goes to a place called Wakefield, where there was a little child
where I'm from,
who scuffed, well, you'll know this story then, this little boy scuffed this Quran, and what happened next was so alarming to me and to many others. His mother, there was death threats put onto this family. His mother was paraded in a headscarf in front of what I would call some kind of, it was like a weird kangaroo court while the police just looked on. She was begging for forgiveness and essentially for her life, whilst people just stood by and let that happen. Politicians didn't push back to that. The police, never mind sitting there supervising that pathetic act, they should have been out on the streets hunting down who is it that's issued death threats to a little boy and his mother. They were not. They were sitting there. And I think when people start calling for more measures to stop people desecrating religious texts, again, something I don't agree with, then chills run down my spine a little bit, because I start to wonder, what is it that you want? Yeah. Because we already have these measures that you've just been describing. So what is it that you want? What more do you want?
And I think that is a question for Tahir Ali. What exactly did he mean by that? But I think when we're talking about the Prime Minister's response, I think, the government is committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division. Great. I think we can all agree on that. You said you don't like to see any religious texts get desecrated. You think that's disrespectful. I agree with you. I think, since Tahir Ali didn't call for anything specific, I think the Prime Minister's answer was appropriate in this context without having more detail from Mr. Ali.
But many people have absolutely interpreted this point that he raised as calling for via the back door. I mean, he was quite subtle in what he said. This is why I'd love the opportunity to ask him specifically what he means. How did you interpret what he called for?
Well, I mean, he opened by saying it's Islamophobia Awareness Month. Now, I presume that is an ancient British holiday that we've had for centuries in this country. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a call for blasphemy laws, because we see this kind of thing all the time coming out of this particular, to use Starmer's language, community. But, look, there needs to be a conversation at some point had in mainstream politics about whether we actually want a religion like Islam making inroads into our society. Because we already have this chap, Tahir Ali, good British name, is a Muslim MP, and his primary constituency appears to be Islam or the Ummah. And that's the case for a number of other MPs in the House who ran specifically on, Gaza, basically. There are 5 independents elected on that issue solely, effectively. So until we are prepared to have a conversation about how we are going to deal with this as a country, I don't think that this is going to get any better. Keir Starmer is certainly not going to do anything about it, because he sat down with Sadiq Khan last year and said about the need for blasphemy laws to, and to take measures against Islamophobia. Islamophobia being a completely invented concept by an organisation called the Runnymede Trust, which is a specifically it's an Islamic advocacy group, and it's an entirely political concept that, I mean, I don't view it as legitimate. I don't think that Islamophobia is a thing, because this suggests...
Well, it is a thing. I mean, that's what a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, it is a thing.
Well, there's perfectly rational reasons.
And the way you talk about... The way you are talking about a whole group of people who subscribe to a particular religion, I find it quite shocking, actually. You might not like some of the things that some people say. You might not like the idea of Islam becoming, the way that people are governing themselves, and you might think that some of it comes into conflict with some of the values we hold dear in Britain.
Would you live in an Islamic country?
Well, I don't live in an Islamic country. Well,
would you move to one?
Why? It's never been on my agenda to move anywhere. Why would I? Don't have. You're trying to draw me in on this issue as if there is a problem with everybody who adheres to the Islamic religion. That's just not the case. And I think you need to be really careful, because I think when you talk about groups of people like that, you demonise them, and you do create Islamophobic rhetoric by doing that.
But there has to be space to have a reasonable conversation about
There are plenty of people in this country who practice Islam who are law-abiding. They work hard, they are really, they're good people, and to talk about an entire religion like that, I think is unacceptable.
But there has to be space to have a reasonable, rational discussion about the merits of an ideology.
It's not reasonable and rational if you are talking about the entire religion like that. That is not reasonable and rational.
I have not spoken about Muslims. I have spoken about Islam. I have spoken about the ideology.
But you've made several comments about, Tahir Ali's name and the constituency which I would say are Islamophobic.
Yeah, but there are perfectly rational reasons to have questions about Islam.
But that's not a question.
Islamophobia implies irrational.
Those weren't questions. That was just mocking him and his constituency. And I don't think that is not acceptable. Is it? Can't you have a grown-up conversation about the things you care about without resorting to?
But this is a man who is, as we've said already, calling for blasphemy laws in the name of combating Islamophobia. And what I'm saying is that Islamophobia, sure, there might be people who irrationally hate Islam, but there are also rational reasons to question it and its proliferation in our country.
And there are rational reasons to question elements of Christianity as well, and there are rational reasons to question conservatism and socialism. There are rational ways of talking about this, but you have to be careful about the way you talk about it. And when you talk about entire groups in those terms, which are derogatory and I think prejudicial, I just don't think it contributes anything good to the conversation.
But when we talk about socialism, when we talk about conservatism, are we talking about all socialists? Are we talking about all conservatives? No, we're talking about the ideas.
But some people... Well, then you can talk about the ideas. You can talk about the ideas without mocking somebody's name or their constituency.
Well, I was just pointing out the fact that this is a very new phenomenon in our country, and one that nobody voted for.
I have got to point out as well, Tahir Ali, he is British, by the way. I do need to bring that point up. What do you make to this one at home? I imagine that there'll be very strong opinions on this topic. And I've got to say, it's the interpretation of what he said. I've interpreted what he said as him calling for blasphemy laws. He hasn't expanded on what measures he currently wants. What do you think to this? Matt says, in this country, we should be able to criticise all religions, any religions. It's a free society, and that must always remain the case. Richard says that this, trying to tell people what they can and can't say, what they can and can't criticise, is the first step to stopping free speech. He feels very concerned about that. Beth says, blasphemy laws for all religions or none at all. Tony says, please stop all of this. All we ever want is free speech. So there you go. Keep your comments coming in after the break. Look, who should feed your children, you or the school? Tell me.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Does it make you all nostalgic? Do you miss the jungle looking at that?
I do, actually. I mean, it was one of the highlights of my career. I really enjoyed it because I'm like a little boy. I love being outdoors and taking the mick and arguing, and I love all that, so that's what it's all about. It's so much emotional stuff because food plays so much a part in being in the jungle, and it really gets your sort of mental bits going, I would love to go back. I mean, maybe there's a show called Geriatrics in the Jungle. I think that might be a good one.
And did you ever have to shout those immortal words, "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here"?
No, I didn't. I think Daniela Westbrook was the only one who bottled out. Most of us stuck it to the end, well, as far as the end as we could get. It was, we had something called the Terrible Trio. It was me, Phil Tufnell, and Linda Barker. And we were the late night drinkers and smokers in those days. Yeah, we just took the mick out of everything, really.
And I was just saying before we came to you, Anthony, there's something a bit perverse about how we all enjoy, my kids as well, absolute hysterics at some people's clear distress. I mean, on the opening show, this guy, Dean, who we're watching now, they were having to eat, I don't want to use the word at this hour of the morning, but part of a male anatomy combined with some eyeballs mushed up into a smoothie. Yeah. And he was drinking it. He said, "My IBS! My IBS!" And we were just laughing.
Play havoc with
It's so weird, isn't it, that we find that so funny?
I'm looking at the two Barrys, Barry McGuigan and GK Barry as my sort of favourites, if you want.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. I'm asking you a question tonight, and I think it's quite a simple one, ladies and gents. Who should be responsible for giving your child breakfast? Is it you? Or is it the school? So many people are already getting in touch. Paul says, Michelle, it's the parents' role. If you can't feed your kids, you shouldn't have had them. How much is a round of bread and half a tin of beans, he asks. Darryl says, Michelle, it's the parents' responsibility. Why should the taxpayer pay? What is family allowance for? Phil says, basically, there's no excuse. Porridge, etc. is pennies. Adele says, Michelle, why are we even asking this? It's simple. Parents should feed their children. And I can tell you now, that is the sense from most of you out there, that it is the responsibility of the parents. The reason I am asking the question is because now a trial in terms of the preemptive step, if you like, before it gets rolled out across all primary schools has now commenced. So children, primary school children, will be able to access 30 minutes of free childcare at the start of their school day whilst they get themselves a breakfast to boot as well. £30 million in additional funding by 2025 on this. Is this a good idea, Charlie, or not?
Well, I think it's actually a damning indictment of the kind of economy that we have in this country, that it's even necessary for both parents to work in order to sustain a family, because the right kind of organisation when it comes to childcare is, is having to rely on the state as little as possible, because we live in a time and an economic situation that requires mothers to work in order to sustain, to pay the bills ultimately. It means it's not possible for them to raise their children, to give them breakfast in the morning, for example. This is particularly true for working class families, right? So it's going to hit them disproportionately hard. But also, I mean, do we really want our children spending more time in state-run institutions like the schools, which seem to exist at this point to fill their head with ideas that do not track with reality and are very politically motivated, like, the ideas about how Britain's history should be understood, for example, and what, how you should understand sex and gender and all of this kind of thing. I think that this is only a bad thing because, it's just going to lead to more atomization in our society. It's going to lead to less sense of family, less sense of belonging. And I actually think, I think certain viewers that you just read out, they've got it wrong. We need people having children. You can't be saying, well, if you can't afford them, don't have children. We need, as we've spoken about already on this show, we have a massively declining birth rate, an ageing population. We need people to have children in this country. And any policy that kind of doesn't allow that to happen is a bad thing.
Sorry?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, any initiative that feeds children who are hungry or who might not otherwise get a meal and therefore not make the most out of their education seems like a good use of money to me and a good thing that the state should be doing. I mean, of course, in an ideal world, parents would feed their children, but there are, you know, we have a country where 1 in 4 children are in poverty, 1 in 3 adults, I believe there was the statistics that published in The Guardian the other day. Clearly not everybody has the means, and some of that has happened simply, some people have been pushed into poverty simply as a result of the cost of living. So, you know, circumstances happens where parents do have children and then they can't afford necessarily to put food on the table, or perhaps children, adults have different working patterns, and it's actually very, very helpful so that they can go to work, that they can drop their kid off half an hour early in a breakfast club. I went to a breakfast club sometimes when I was at school. Certainly didn't do me any harm. It was a good thing. You know, I think kids being in school is an excellent thing. I don't think we should be arguing against kids going to school. I think that's ridiculous. Yeah, I think this is a great initiative, exactly the sort of thing I'd like to see a Labour government doing more of.
Karen has got in touch and said, Michelle, we must never, ever blame and persecute the children. All children should have food. And if we really are in a situation where parents honestly can't afford food, then the parents should be getting financial classes on things like how to budget, how to shop and how to cook. Do you think we could ever... Is there any real excuse these days for genuinely... You said if there's ever a scenario where a child isn't getting fed. I mean, we've got child benefit, we've got universal credit, you've got food banks all over the place, you've got charities all over the place, you've got Healthy Start funding, you've got so much stuff. So I can't fathom how a parent genuinely would ever be able to say, I do not have whatever it is to feed my own child?
Well, I think sometimes it can be about the very specific circumstances they're in. So, yes, we do have a lot of state support, as you set out, but, you know, in real terms, that hasn't increased in terms with the cost of living. You also have the issue of, you know, say, for example, you have a vulnerable... say you have a single mother who has left an abusive ex-partner. She might not have very much money. She might be working overtime, several jobs. Sometimes it's not that they aren't able to feed their... afford to feed their kids. It's that they have to sacrifice certain meals in order to feed them at all. So sometimes it's the parent that goes hungry in order to feed the child. There are things like debt as well that really affect families' finances, the cost of housing, you know, all of these issues. You know, we do have support. We're lucky to live in a state that does provide support, but this support hasn't grown in the way it should to provide for the number of people who have been plunged into poverty as a result of austerity over the last 14 years.
I was one of those children. My mum did leave a very abusive relationship with all of us younger kids, and we had to go without lots of things, but we never, ever, ever went without food. My mum went without food to make sure that we had it, but we never went without food. Things were just made from scratch, and everything was sacrificed to get us what our basic needs were. And I just worry, I worry, are we in danger of the state essentially becoming the parent?
Well, that's, I think, what all this kind of policy ultimately drives towards is replacing the parent with the state, because that's in the state's interest, because it extends the degree to which the state controls people's day-to-day lives. But actually, part of this story that I don't see a lot of people talking about is questioning... Sure, OK, let's have these breakfast clubs, fine. But what are the children going to be fed at these breakfast clubs? Because somehow, I don't think...
Apparently it's going to be nutritious, that's
well,
what
I'm sure they would say that, but I somehow doubt it's going to be locally produced, high-quality food, because that's just not going to be affordable, unfortunately. And so you have to wonder what it is they're going to be feeding these kids, because it's probably going to be industrial, manufactured slop, because that's what so much of our supermarkets sell people these days.
Well, I mean, if you're a hungry child, you know, it says here, Magic Breakfast, one of the charities that's doing it, will provide snacks like bagels and cereals that children can pick up. I mean, surely having a meal...
Having something is better than having nothing.
Of course,
for sure.
yeah.
But there still should be a conversation about the fact that so much of our food is just not good for us. So a lot of the stuff that is branded as nutritional and healthy is actually not.
Well, I would say school lunches have probably improved quite a lot over the past couple of decades. I mean, I know when I was in primary school, we were getting turkey twizzlers, and when I was in high school, we certainly weren't. Yeah. So, but, you know, there's a conversation to be had about nutrition. But I think in this circumstance, when you have a child who, you know, is hungry and can't concentrate in their lessons, then being able to pick up a bagel, have a bowl of cereal, have a slice of toast. I think that's, that's great. And you can really see that, the cyclical impact of this. If you don't intervene early when children are young in those kind of situations, often it's really hard for them to get out of the pattern. There is a clear relationship between this kind of thing and exclusions later in life. So I think whatever a Labour government can do to break that link and to keep more children in school, on the right path, I think is a good thing.
Steve said this should never, ever be about politics, Michelle. It's a simple issue. It's a simple statement, Steve says, in fact. All children should be fed, irrespective of anything else. He absolutely rejects the notion that this should ever be a Labour v Tory thing or whatever. Barbara has been in touch and said, again, Michelle, people just don't understand how to cook from scratch. This is a skill. I used to do, was it home economics? Was that what you used to
I
call
did
it?
that as well, yeah.
I learned how to cook. Well, I mean, I'm a terrible cook, don't get me wrong, but I did actually get taught by my mum predominantly, but also at the schools. Do you think that, but then I'm hearing myself say that I did home economics, and then I think, is it the school's job to teach children how to cook?
I wouldn't mind seeing a return of that, to be honest, because it's an extremely valuable skill to be able to cook nutritious and affordable meals. It's something that I learned when I was at university. I love cooking. It's one of my... I consider it a hobby. I'm obsessed with it. But it's, it's something that's good for people to know how to do. And I think, yeah, why not? If we're going to spend 30 million quid on feeding the children, why don't we spend 30 million quid on putting together a comprehensive programme where we teach children how to take care of themselves? And that's not just in terms of cooking, that's in terms of finances and everything else, things that the schools just don't teach kids. But again, this policy, these school meals, strikes me as treating a symptom as opposed to addressing a cause. Because, again, it comes back to the fact that people just don't have time to feed their kids. People don't have the resources to feed their kids. And that, to me, just treating that by chucking money at the issue doesn't seem to be a particularly effective long-term strategy.
Well, I've got to tell you, you guys at home, as I've just been trying to echo with your comments, you are very divided on this one. But the sentiment absolutely is that it should never be the children that are punished for the mistakes. And I've got to be honest as well, the poor choices often of their parents. And on that, I think we would all agree. There's not a lot of optimism about whether or not the Tories would ever be able to control immigration. People are going back and judging them on their past track record. And there's also lots of respect for Peter Lynch. I started my programme by mentioning the fact that it is his funeral today, and I will end by just, again, sending my regards to all of his loved ones. I hope he rests in peace. For now, that's all I've got time for. Thank you. Have a good night. Next up, Farage. Night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Cold one tonight, frost already starting to form and some dense patches of fog are already thickening up out there too. Storm Connell is clearing away. It was named by the Dutch Weather Service because it's bringing them some very wet and windy weather. But as it clears, high pressure's moving in, clear skies for most overnight. We've seen some thick fog through the day today across Northern Ireland, thickening up again tonight and across parts of England and Wales. We are going to see things turning misty and murky with some quite dense patches of fog by dawn. Freezing fog as well as temperatures dip quite widely below freezing. Towns and cities -1, -2, rural spots much lower than that. One place that may not see much frost, the far southwest of England. Here a bit more cloud moving in, but certainly for Scotland, I say towns and cities a little below freezing, but through some sheltered glens, -7, -8, maybe -9. Not quite as cold in Northern Ireland because here we are going to have the fog. Something to bear in mind for the morning rush hour. It should be clearing through the morning as the breeze picks up. Dense patches of fog also likely northwest England, East Wales, the Midlands and parts of East Anglia and the southeast. So again, some pretty unpleasant travelling conditions through that morning rush hour. And that fog may well last actually well beyond the rush hour and linger in some spots into the afternoon. In the west, it's going to turn cloudy, a bit of patchy rain for Wales, southwest England, certainly Northern Ireland turning a bit damp as the breeze picks up here. Many parts of Scotland, Northern England will be dry and bright, but still quite chilly here, 4, 5, 6 at best in the east, where the fog sticks. We'll struggle to get much above freezing. But it is turning milder. The wind's coming up from the south on Friday. Still feeling pretty chilly, I suspect, in these eastern areas, despite some hazy sunshine. Could be some fog around again on Friday morning, and then in the west we're looking at rain coming in. Northern Ireland, western Scotland, bit of rain for Wales and southwest England too come Friday. But it is turning milder with temperatures here back into double figures. Goodbye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day. right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems in Greater Manchester on the M60. The motorway is blocked anti-clockwise at Junction 5 and Princes Parkway exit. They're recovering a multi-vehicle collision on highways with long queues back Junction 8 at Carrington. In Leicestershire, the M1 is being held northbound just before the Loughborough exit, Junction 23, following an accident. And in Staffordshire, the M54 is down to one lane westbound from Junction 2 to 3 to the west of Wolverhampton, following a serious accident. In Hampshire, the A331 Blackwater Valley route closed near Aldershot at the Ash Junction because of flooding. In West Sussex at Burden, the A286 has been closed following a collision. And in Hampshire at Southampton, the A335 Thomas Lewis Way closed for flooding. And on London Underground, there are severe delays on the District Line Barking to Upminster due to emergency engineering works earlier on at Upminster. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home? Talking about? Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy. Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good evening, it's me again. I'm Martin Dewbs, standing in for the big man Nigel Farage. On Farage tonight, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has said that the Tories got it wrong, you don't say, when it came to reducing immigration, going as far to blame it on Brexit. And the Shadow Immigration Secretary also committed to a hard cap on immigration, but are his words as useless as a screen door on a submarine? And the Business Secretary has called today a dark day for Luton after Vauxhall announced it would be closing down its historic factory, costing up to 1,100 jobs. Yet the government has doubled down on its commitment to phase out petrol and diesel cars by 2030, a policy, remember, brought in by the Conservatives. But should they consider U-turning on this net zero policy? Plus, Labour continue to bite the hand that feeds them. Today, farmers gathered in Dover to call for a government U-turn on its controversial inheritance tax plan raids. I'll be joined by one of those protesters later on in the programme. Now, all of that to come and much more. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 7 o'clock. These are your headlines. Labour have no serious plan for ending illegal migration. That's a message from Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, who says we can no longer be naive. Giving a speech a short while ago, she said the Conservatives are to thank for a reduction in net immigration expected to be confirmed tomorrow. The Tory leader laid out her 5-point plan for tackling immigration while admitting her party got it wrong in the past.
People know that if they can make it to the UK, they will be able to stay. We must end that. The result of Labour's policies will be consistently high illegal immigration throughout this Parliament and insufficient action on legal migration. But we are not in government now. We are the opposition, and our role now is to hold the government to account.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has ruled out calling another general election after a petition calling for a rerun garnered over 2.8 million signatures. The petition on Parliament's website calling for another election has become the third most popular e-petition since 2010, easily surpassing the 100,000 signatures required for a debate to take place. While the vast majority of those signing it are from the UK, it has also gained support from other countries. Donald Trump ally Elon Musk used his ex-social media